Hey everyone, Worm Empire back at you. 250 subscribers, unbelievable. Thanks so much for everyone who's come aboard and has stuck around. Much appreciated. Today's video is going to be a bit of a count of the things I struggle with the most with these worm bins. Problem 1, reading your bin. Reading your bin can be tricky sometimes. This was my original bin from the beginning of the Worm Empire playlist. I mean, this physical bin is the original one, but and I got all my super rookie mistakes worked out, and now I'm just down to the rookie mistakes. But reading your bin can be tricky. What I see here is damp bedding, which is good. And then what I see is some longer term food like potato slices. And especially if you're starting with a small amount of worms, it can be tricky to know how much food to give them unless you weighed out how many worms that you have as a weight, and then you can get an idea of how much food they actually need. So this is a squash shell. So that's some long-term food for these guys. Long-term food is good if you're going to be leave a bin alone for a long time, so that if you don't get back to it when all the short-term food has been eaten, they have something to pick away at. I thought I was actually going to have to feed this bin, but I don't. And I've got scraps ready that I was going to feed this bin, but I think there's still enough food in here for them to be okay. So I basically have to find room for my stinky food in one of my bins. Yeah, there's definitely enough food in here. So some of the problems I have is just managing how much food I need for any given week and how much I actually have got. I'm right on the verge of needing to go and actually get more food at certain times. But right now, this bin that I thought needed feeding, I don't believe does need feeding. I'm gonna leave it go for another week or so because everything smells a little fresh. And breaking up a potato here. Potatoes can take a long time if they're in larger pieces. That'll be a long-term food for these guys. So yeah, just reading your bin, it can be a real chore sometimes, and sometimes you don't know what to expect. Challenge 2. Dealing with an increasing worm population. So a lot of people, and with good reason, will buy a set amount of red wigglers, such as like a pound, half pound, something like that. I started off with 150 actual red wigglers, and I have grown the population from that amount because I wanted to understand them, and that was the way I decided to do it. But by doing that, it can make things a little bit complicated. For example, I never know how many actual worms are in each bin. When I start a new bin, I'll take a handful with a small amount of worms and throw them in a new bin with bedding and watch them go. And then what happens is every week I come back and there's more worms than before. Now how many? I don't know. And how much food do I feed an unknown amount of worms? I don't know. So I have to basically just look every week and analyze what the state of the bin is, and then guess how much food they need. This bin here seems to have a lot of organic material left in it, and there's an influx of smaller worms in here that I see. which means the population is growing when you see a lot of babies, obviously. So I'm just going to give them a light snack, a nice quick light snack. This lettuce will get warm from the breaking down and decaying process, and it will create a nice little hot spot after it's covered up. That'll all break down and get hot, and those worms like warm spots, warm wet spots like that, to breed more worms. But that's all I'm going to give them, because I thought there would be enough. I thought this bin needed a feeding as well, but my last feeding was a little heavy, and so now that it's basically the feeding weekend, they didn't eat all the food I gave them last week, so I'm in this constant state of flux and reading. So that's another aspect that can be problematic. Challenge 3, just finding time to do this. It took a lot of convincing to get my wife to actually keep scraps around in the first place. I could definitely do it in a better way, but all I basically do for most of the week is collect coffee grinds. There's potato peels in there, a couple apple cores, and some vegetable guts. And I'm going to invest very soon in a large Tupperware that seals all that stuff up. And then if I leave that out, there's hell to pay. So I have found that hell, and I've paid it a number of times, but what it does is it forces me, the state of those scraps force me to have to come down here and do another feeding. Oh yeah. Who doesn't love to see that in a worm community? Them going to town on a tomato from a few days ago. Then what I'll do is I'll take the dry bedding from the outside and just move it into the middle and just try and keep everything as damp as possible there. One of the solutions I found to this problem is maybe not having a lid to just keep storing your problems away in a dark corner until it starts to walk around by itself and start to crawl away. So this thing forces me to be vigilant and consistent with these with the worms here, so that everything just keeps going on a consistent timeline. So yeah, just finding the time to do this, especially when you're starting out and it's not much of a business, or there's not much to gain. This is basically still a hobby at my stage, but hopefully it will become more. Challenge 4, planning ahead. Planning ahead is really important. It's always important to keep more bedding around for when you need it, when it's time to start a new bin. It's important to have food kicking around for the next feedings. I try and feed them as much fresh food scraps as I can, but I do have frozen bricks of shredded potatoes that I will give them when I'm short, or maybe if we've been camping or gone and there's nothing fresh for me to give them. Then that's when it's good to be prepared. So staying ahead of the game is one of the things that make this a lot easier. Just reacting to different situations as they come up could be very difficult. Like even though sometimes it feels like this is a very long-term process, it can take months for a bin to break down, depending on what you're feeding them and such. The way I do it, it takes about roughly 3 months for a bin to break down. But then when it is broken down, I'll need more. And it's easy to not have the stuff that you need, like bedding. I've got bags of bedding shredded up, and every time a a bit of time goes by and I get down to the last bag, garbage bag full of bedding, it's like, well, I need more of that. So you got to do it, but you got to do it before you actually need it. So that's just the challenges that come up, is trying to be as prepared as possible. Like I've even got about 3 or 4 more of these black mortar bins kicking around outside for whenever I want to expand a bin and I feel like I'm ready to do that, I'll be ready to. So being prepared is definitely a challenge, and knowing how to be prepared can definitely be challenging too, and reacting to the shortfalls you may come upon. So that can also be another challenge. And one of the hardest challenges I find with all of this is waiting. Waiting is a lost art, it seems, these days. Waiting can be tricky this day and age for some, but it's definitely worth it because it's a very enjoyable process getting to the goal that you are out to achieve, and sometimes the waiting makes it all the more enjoyable. Like this is my collection of castings, and this took a long time for me to get. I've given away I've maybe used about this much already. So this is about half of all the castings that I've produced, but I've never had this much at once. If I were to guess, there's about, I think I weighed this, there's about 35 pounds worth of castings here. And come the end of this month, I'll actually have been doing this for a year, that I started with 150 worms. So I went from 150 worms to a yearly total of, I'm probably at 70 or 80 pounds of castings. So that's very rewarding for me. There's blunders all through my Worm Empire playlist. There's successes all through. And anybody who wants to see a guy just start up from scratch and go through a year's worth of learning how red wigglers work and eventually get to a point where this is the result. That's my Worm Empire playlist, and I think my 250 subscribers have looked through some of that, and I very much appreciate that people are watching over me, helping me out along the way, starting their own thing, and I very much am enjoying this ride, and I can't wait to show you what the second year will be like. So thank you very much. Have a good weekend. It's Thanksgiving here in Canada, so happy Thanksgiving, and I will talk to everyone really soon. Bye.